The world is an amazing place. It is full of mysteries and marvels, and what happens in our lives is we often go through our lives following a program which today people will often refer to as the Matrix, which means that we live in a continuous experiencing continuous messaging from the radio, from the television, from our mobile phones, from other people. And we can go through our lives literally living in a sequence, a never-ending sequence of ideas that are instilled upon us. And with so much suffering and sadness and an endless feed of negativity which bombards us through the television and the radio, and people around us that are very negative or very limited in their scope within this magnificent world that we inhabit and we live in. And it doesn't need to be that way. So many of us, and it was for me included, and it often is, are just oblivious or unaware of these marvels and mysteries of this amazing world that we live in. And conditions such as anxiety and stress and and constantly obsessed with ourselves, all restrict and chain us to these conditions, and we can live up our lives like a gerbil or a hamster on a wheel. You know, that the image of a gerbil, a hamster running around the wheel, and or just like a fish swimming down the current. But we need to sometimes get out of the stream of things and get off the wheel, that we become locked in a cycle. And these cycles can often be very unhealthy and lead to all sorts of psychological problems and unhappiness and feeling of. So what we're going to talk about now is we're going to look at one of the marvels of the world. And in this series there are several of these talks about the marvelous world that we live in and how it's within us and around us, which we're just simply unaware of. I'm going to start with the radio and the mobile phone, and how we send and receive images and videos and text messages through our mobile devices. In our hands we have a marvel, a miracle if you want, a scientific wonder. Let's keep miracles for spiritual podcasts. So, I have a phone, I take a picture, within 2 seconds that image has arrived in Australia, if I send it to someone in Australia, or if I send it to Paris, to Argentina, to Timbuktu. How is it that in 2 seconds your text message and your photograph will arrive in on that phone? How? There are 4 what's called fundamental forces of nature. Excuse me if you already know some of this, but hopefully you'll enjoy just listening to this podcast about radio transmission and how our mobile phones send and receive images around the world in a second. I read it online. It's not something that I have had a vision of or a divination of, just simple things that I've become aware of, and hopefully may learn something. So there are four fundamental forces, as they're called, in nature. There is the gravity force. You know, I'm sitting here. If I drop something, it falls to the table. Gravity. Then we have the strong nuclear force. So you know that we're all made of atoms, and the world is built of little atoms. Well, those atoms are composed of bits and pieces. There's an electrons going around each atom. Inside the atom you have a proton, a neutron, and you have then those are built up of quarks, and you have gluons and antiquarks, and so things, all in an atom, okay, microscopic. So what it is they are held together with the strong force. The strong force is a second fundamental force of nature. And a third force is it's called beta decay, which is how substances change. So for example, in an atom, what's called it's called color change in atoms. So a proton, which is a positively charged particle, can become a neutron, which is a neutrally charged particle. How things can change, swap their identities, and how things, you know, nuclear decay, and you may radiation, and how materials change from one thing to something else. It's called the weak force. We're now going to look at the electromagnetic force. It sounds as though being electromagnetic, that perhaps those are two forces rolled into one. It's one singular force called the electromagnetic force. It's one of the four fundamental forces around us. In a future podcast, I'm going to talk about what I understand to be the fifth force. The fifth force being the life force, which includes consciousness, which isn't necessarily noted in science. The life force. So the electromagnetic light, for example, for you to be able to see me, and for me to be able to talk to the camera and see my bomba, my mate, my green tea, popular in Argentina, to be able to see that, I see it because of light allows me to see it. Now light is an electromagnetic wave. It's one of the electromagnetic waves. It's called the visible spectrum, the visible electromagnetic wave. Light is an electromagnetic wave. And it has a certain frequency. Now, frequency, so the amount of ups and downs per second is called a hertz. It's for Hertz, named after Hertz, who speculated and discovered, and speculated on these electromagnetic waves. Now wait, these permeate all around you. There are these electromagnetic waves going on. Amazing. So right here, I'm never alone if I have my mobile or a radio, because they are communicating with electromagnetic frequencies that we can't see with our visual eye, but can be measured by science, or if you have a Wi-Fi measuring app on your mobile phone. So we're surrounded by we live in an electromagnetic field. We're never just sitting alone in a room or on a beach, or we are surrounded by this electromagnetic field which permeates the universe. Now, electromagnetic waves have a spectrum. So you have the lowest frequency, the slowest curves up and down of the hertz is called. We have radio waves, which is another wave of the it's called an electromagnetic wave, but it's designated radio waves because of the frequency. And then after that, more frequently, you have microwaves, which microwaves use literally to heat food. And then slightly faster soon, we have the spectrum of light. For enable us to see around us, we need light. And light is the kind of middle area of the electromagnetic spectrum. Spectrum is comes from the Latin spectator, speculate, the word for mirror in Latin, specula, all to do with sight, okay? So in the then after that we have infrared. And then after that we have after infrared, the most vibrant frequency, we have the nuclear reactions we call X-rays. X-rays are faster still. And then after that we have gamma rays. And gamma rays are so fast that gamma radiation and a nuclear radiation is so fast that they actually damage our cells on our own frequencies. They're harmful to the human body. But the frequencies that we use with our mobile phones and for radios and things don't damage our human body per se, throughout our body in the way that, say, the higher frequencies. So the electromagnetic spectrum or electromagnetic force is one of the 4 fundamental forces of the universe, and it's a field which permeates, which I'm sitting in right now, and you are sitting in over where you are. You're sitting in a field of electromagnetic energy. The sun is the primary producer of electromagnetism in the universe. Stars produce a small amount. So these electromagnetic waves are really coming from the sun. Well, then we go, well, what is an electromagnetic wave? How does it work? Okay, so light, visible light, and also the other waves, light travels at 186,000 miles per second of my clock. And in kilometers per hour, it's 220,000 kilometers in a second. This is Einstein's speed of light. Measured C, with a C in science. When you go E equals mc squared, Einstein's famous recipe, we'll call it a recipe equation, the C refers to light. And this is the speed with which our mobile phone messages and videos fly to the receiving end. To another person's phone, the person you send your messages, your message is going to fly or be transmitted at 186,000 miles a second, because mobile phones and radios transmit and receive, but they use the electromagnetic spectrum, and this field in the transmission of your image, your text message, or your video. So electromagnetic waves, which are this force field around the universe, they are waves. They're called sinusoidal waves. And a wave is actually, they are called a transverse wave, if you want to use words. We can go on, but I love words. A transverse wave is a combination of electric wave interwoven with a magnetic wave, and they move at right angles. This is the important. These electromagnetic field which surrounds me and you, they are waves that are composed of an electromagnetic energy, if you like, so interwoven, if you like. And the thing is that electromagnetic waves don't have any weight. They are massless. Well, you go, well, everything has a weight. You know, surely it can't exist if it hasn't got a mass. You know, my gourd with my green tea from Argentina reminds me to. It has weight. It has a mass. You know, gravity, you know, will tell us that. But it has an identity of particle. Now, the electromagnetic field doesn't have any particles at all. So maybe that's why we can understand that light travels at 186,000 miles a second. Or kilometers, 222,000, as I've explained. It is called a massless. And the thing that you identify in quantum physics, as it's called, the quanta, i.e. the element that is associated, you associate to measure, define and identify it as massless in electromagnetic spectrum, is called a photon. And photons are massless. And because photons are massless, this is very important when we understand about how we send a text message, video, photograph through our mobile phones, right? Because clearly our mobile phone is an object, and it's not massless. It has a mass, if you like. It has a shape, a weight. So how can... Okay, I'm going to explain now how this marvel works, okay? So I'm going to start from my mobile phone and how, my cellular, and how I can send a text message to somebody in wherever you like. We're going to say Australia. And it will arrive there within 1.5 to 2 seconds. Instantly. Even though 1 second it'll arrive there. How? Okay, this is how it works. So I've talked a bit about electromagnetic spectrum, which is the field with which my text message is going to arrive in Australia. Now, a mobile phone, when I interact with my mobile phone and I type the message, okay? I'm typing it and I'm on the keyboard breaking an electric circuit. My finger has an electric current. I'm completing a circuit when I touch the keyboard, the QWERTY keyboard. When I touch it, I'm completing a circuit. That circuit creates an electric signal, and the signal, the little electric charge, if you want, is converted into a binary string. Now, a binary string is just something that has 1 and 0, and ones and zeros. You may know that. On, and think of it as on and off. Binary means bi means 2. Okay, biannual, twice annually, bicentenary, bipolar, 2. So binary means the 2, the 1 on the 0. The 0 is not, no, and the 1 is if. So if I have a 0, which means no, not, no electric current, and 1 means yes. So if I have no, no, 1, no, 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 1, that goes bum, 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 it creates an electric current. So with our computers, everything is stored in bits and bytes, and there are 8 bits in a byte. A bit is a 0 or a 1. So a bit could be a 0, or a bit could be a 1. And a byte is composed of 8 bits. So for example, if I touch the letter T on my keyboard, bear with me, for the start of a message, so I'm going to talk about a tree or a tiger. I touch the letter T, and the binary code for the letter T to ingress, to make it into the mobile, is 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0. So you're like a 0, a 10, and a 100. There are 8 bits there. So it's off, on, off, on, off, on, off, off. That is how that is. So letter S would be 0, 0, 1, another combination of 8 little units. So that little circuit there creates an electric signal. And that signal is, with the microprocessors in the phone, it's processed. That electric charge is stored through a transistor. That's either stored on my phone. I can store my text message, but it'll move it there, and it will also create an electric charge. So if I want to send this message, okay, the electric charge is generated by what's called a transistor, and the transistor, the electric charge then goes to a transmitter in my phone. Now, this is a electric charge. It's not a wave, as the electromagnetic field is, which I'm explaining to you now. It's called it's a charge, a current. So what it is that the transmitter in your mobile phone or radio or wherever, it creates an oscillating current. Okay, it creates an oscillating, steady oscillating current. Okay, there's a bit called the oscillator. And oscillating is a lovely word. It just means to go up and down, or oscillate like that. So it creates this, your antenna creates this, the transmitter creates this oscillating wave. Whoa, what's that? And then your text message, so that a T and everything, all the text message goes rapidly. It creates an electric charge. Now this electric charge modulates the oscillating wave. Okay, now the oscillating wave can be a series of an alternating modulated current. AM, you may have heard of AM, and FM is a frequency modulated current. Now that current is still, it's an electric charge, if you like. It's an electric signal. But we've now gone from some text through the system, through the transistor, then through up to the transmitter, and your text message is then mapped. The frequency is mapped onto what's called the signal wave. Okay, it's modulating the wave, and that modulating wave is then broadcast through the antenna, and it agitates the electromagnetic field which permeates all the universe. Okay, it interferes with this field that permeates. And remember, this field, such as light, the microwave, infrared, radio waves, as we're talking about radios, they all operate at different frequencies. So the frequency of the wave, which is modulated, which has the data put onto it, so it's its frequency. So if you like a letter T, if I were to say the word tiger, would be on, off, on, off, as we've established the code. Everything is rapid. And so this frequency is generated, this all your information, your texts, your images, everything is all going on a frequency, right? Which is converted into a frequency. Now that frequency is then broadcast out with an antenna, and that disrupts the electromagnetic field of the frequencies around us. Now, it travels, you're disrupting this electromagnetic field composed of frequencies, quite complicated. And so your message is converted from a digital signal into the electromagnetic field. Now the electromagnetic field is an analog signal. It's called an analog signal. So your electric generated frequency on your phone is sent into and disrupts the analog field of the electromagnetic spectrum. And it flies then at 186,000 miles per second. Now, your mobile phone company will have bought and owns, as they do around the world, a certain frequency. Think of it like that. An electromagnetic frequency. There's a frequency that they will have owned. So the receiver on the other end, with an IP address, they're called, which is an IP which is owned by the the setup of your internet service provider, your mobile phone provider. The other person, their antenna will receive. So you've transmitted the signal from your phone, and the other person receives it through their antenna. And the whole steps that I've told you are reversed the other way. And then the electromagnetic wave, the frequency that the antenna, the transmission master sent it, your phone picks up the frequency in the antenna. It like traps that frequency, and there's a resonator in that antenna which amplifies this signal that you're receiving, and then a sudden stream of that message literally flies through the air and comes through your phone as the data packets, wham, into your phone. And then the steps are reversed. Well, I can go through them, which is simply that the antenna then amplifies, the resonator amplifies what is coming in, the frequency, and then the transmitter demodulates, i.e. turns the frequency of the electromagnetic frequency into an electric signal. The electric signal then passes to the transistor, and the transistor then turns that electric signal, reads it if you like, and then turns that into a series of ones and zeros, which is then stored. It's called the binary code. The binary code, and it's broken down into bits and bits. So the simple things such as on and off, or if you're familiar with the South Korean flag and the yin and yang symbol of the black and the white, this bipolar thing which permeates the universe, you see everything is stored in just ones and thing, on, off, on, off, on. And if you know about Morse code, you'll know that Morse code was originally a series of bump, bump, dun, 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 on and offs, on and offs, on and on, 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 on. Amazing. We live in an amazing, marvelous world. Life is such an amazing thing to be a part of. This is a series of 3, and the next vlog, I said blog, I want a podcast, much more sexy word. Next podcast is how we see. How do we see light, colours with our eyes? How? Our eyes are miracles. They're amazing. We can see colours and distinguish shapes and sound. The other one, and the third in the series, is how plants process electromagnetic energy, how plants process light and turn it into energy, which can either be food for us to eat or alternatively ends up becoming fossilized coal or oil, and which all comes from the carbon which plants and things produce. How do plants turn this energy field around us, light, into growth and things such as seeds that we eat, and the plants that the amazing colours and things that we see, or even then into what becomes carbon and copper. So there are a series of 3. I'd like to end up on one note, is that life is long and grand. So don't ever think that life becomes shorter and smaller and narrower, become trapped in this endless pattern of programming, and we're instilled with things, images and messaging, and all the time. It's important to break the chains of these preconditioned thoughts, to expand your mind, and to even appreciate and understand some of the things that permeate the world we live in. So much of anxiety, depression, sadness, nervousness, basic, if you want to call it distress, is caused simply because we don't know how to free ourselves from this endless barrage of ideas and knowledge. So by considering, even the electromagnetic field, and how Mike can send a text message to Australia, arrives in 1 second in Australia, because Australia isn't 186,000 miles away from me, how it can arrive there in 1 second. It's an amazing thing.